Good morning, everybody. I have to go after Don Pepper, so be nice to me. My name is Sam Boonin. Yes, thank you for being nice to me. My name is Sam Boonin. I'm the VP of Product Strategy at Zendesk. We've been partners and customers and friends of Totango for probably over 5 years at this point, and I've been in this community of customer success for a while. So I could have talked about a number of things, but what I really wanted to talk about was, as a product manager by sort of birth and training, I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about what the product manager's viewpoint on this whole customer success movement is, and maybe share some of the lessons that we've learned over the last couple years. So quick introduction to Zendesk, for those of you who don't know us. We are currently on a $350 million run rate as a business, which is remarkable. You see a lot of up and to the right. You see some of our customers on the bottom. But something to note is that today we have over 90,000 paying customers, and at any given time, another 50 to 100,000 either free customers or people who are trialing our product. So everything we've done has always been at a level of scale that is a little uncommon for B2B companies, and that's a big part of what I'm going to talk about today. We have this concept that we talk about, is that relationships between consumers and businesses are complicated, and they're increasingly complicated, and there's no real solution to winning the customer or owning the customer or delighting the customer. We don't believe that. What we believe is that relationships are complicated, and that's what we need to understand. So what that means is we have to understand what organizations and consumers want. Organizations, they want things like loyalty. They want repeat business. They want trust, as Don was talking about. They want to create a level of trust so customers will keep coming back. Ultimately, evangelism makes acquisition very cheap. But that's not what consumers want. Consumers want responsiveness, right? They want to understand, if I have a problem, I immediately get a response. They want transparency. They want to know what's going on. They don't want to have to deal with an opaque company. And then ultimately, they want to be empowered to serve themselves. And for lack of a better description, that's where we live at Zendesk. We live at the intersection of what organizations want and what consumers are demanding in this world that we live in. Fun fact, any customer service interaction is 4 times more likely to drive disloyalty than loyalty. That's the whole concept, is that loyalty is for dogs, right? It's not really as achievable as you think, and something that we live in. So what that means is that at Zendesk, we create software for better customer relationships. You probably know us for our customer support product. We have a family of products that help companies manage the entire customer lifecycle in different ways. And I think that is the end of my Zendesk commercial, but it provides some context for what I'm going to talk about. As I mentioned, I'm a product guy. I've been at Zendesk for about 5.5 years. And when I showed up there, the concept of customer success was just kind of getting started, but it's sort of been a thread that's been through a lot of what we've been doing. I'm not going to talk so much about the customer success teams that we've built in the organizations as much, although I could, because we've had a lot of success there and a lot of learnings. What I'm going to talk about is the product perspective. So this was Zendesk in 2010. It was a website that was localized in 10 or 12 languages. You came to the website, circa 2010 design. You entered in your name, email, phone number. You started a trial, and then if we were lucky, you actually converted into a customer. There was very little human touch to that process. We did some good things in the early days by customizing the welcome email. We had a little process where we would look at your website and say, oh, I like how you use the color pink on your website or something. But for the most part, it was a self-service business. And it was simple. Things were simple. We had a very simple web try-buy funnel. People came to our website, a conversion rate of people who turn into leads, another conversion rates of people who swipe their credit card or enter their credit card information in, and that was our business, which was great and wonderful, but something happened, which, for those of you who are in the world of software as a service, this is the thing you want to see. Our LTV to CAC ratio, the ratio of customer lifetime value to acquisition cost, was really high. So we were, what VCs will tell you is invest in this business. So we invested in this business very, very heavily. Most of the investments, or a lot of the investments we did, were people, right? That was the easiest thing for us to do. We also invested in product, which I'll talk about. But from a products person's perspective, we had an arm. I mean, they didn't look like this, obviously, but we did not invest in clip art from Google Photos, but you get the idea. We invested in lots of people, and we brought in salespeople, account managers, and the acronyms just started CSEs and CSMs and AMs and AEs and CSEs and CSMs and all these different things. And that was really great because it allowed us to sort of support the scale that I was talking about, but it also had some consequences. This is one of the consequences, which is now if you look at our business, we have many funnels. We have many customer touch points. This is just looking at sort of primarily the new business funnel. But what you see is what was a relatively simple world of web, try, buy. Today is multiple channels. We have different websites. We have resellers. We do field marketing. And then it's not just trials. We have demo requests. It looks like a typical B2B software business. And it becomes much harder in some ways to manage and to conceptualize. So that's, at a very, super brief way, like the journey we went on as a company. So what do we think of as product managers when we go through this? Well, a couple things. First, product people like to solve problems in product. In some ways, the friction that we're seeing, very similar to what Don Peppers was saying, is the result of an imperfect product. I think in a perfect world, our products hit the customer needs so well that humans don't need to be involved at all. And that the features are so self-evident that they don't need to be explained at all. We're lucky enough to have some great web and mobile apps that you guys use every day, some great mobile games that they really rely on the customer experience. If you stop playing Candy Crush because you hit some snag or you couldn't figure out how to get past level 28, you probably won't go back. So these consumer companies that we work with, who are our customers, we learn from and we're inspired from. So the question becomes, what can we do in product to do that? So that's what we started to think about on the product side of things. We started to say, how can we actually manage the customer experience? How can we think about customer success from a product-first perspective? So some of the things we've done, I had to dust off my old slides to find some of this, but first thing we did was we started to rebuild our own trial user experience. So how do we take what was a relatively simple experience as our product grew and actually make it a little more guided and make it a little more thoughtful? So here you see, I think circa 2012 or 2013 was sort of here are the 10 things you can do to set up your Zendesk. Configure your email, add agents. We love it when you add agents because then you buy them, maybe not the most customer-first perspective on it. Add a help center. We used some data. We sort of understood a little bit about what drove conversion. We know a lot about what customers were asking for, and we tried to make the trial experience a little more guided than it was. The second thing we did is we started to think about onboarding, not just onboarding into a trial of Zendesk software, but onboarding for individual features. In the world of Zendesk, in the world of a lot of products, all features are not created equal, and all features are not consumed at the same time. So this is an example of Zendesk Insights, which is our analytics feature. And what we learned is, number one, people want to understand analytics and what you're doing before they get dumped into charts or dashboards. And number two is analytics is very often used 30, 60, 90 days after you turn the software on, which makes sense, right? If you don't have any data, you're not going to use the reporting features. So we wanted to make sure that, let's have a separate onboarding for the reporting features, for insights. So we started to take care at building not just an overall trial user experience, but building an onboarding flow for different features. So this is an example of Zendesk Insights. We did very similar things for a number of our different features. And we tried to understand, as I mentioned, like where in the customer journey it was happening, how much of that is predictable, and then also give people a good experience and educate them along the way. The second thing we did is we started to experiment with in-product messaging. something I know a lot of you have done. There's a number of vendors that provide this capability. And what we wanted to understand was what we had was tens of thousands of people trialing our software, tens of thousands of support tickets getting submitted, dozens, if not hundreds of sort of salespeople reaching out, and there was just a lot of friction and it was very disconnected. So as much as we can create these great experiences with onboarding, in-product messaging for us was making it really easy for people when they were engaged in a product to reach out. So here you see an example from, I think this is actually still live today, which is clicking on that little orange button that's grayed out on the right, giving people really simple call to action. Chat with us, you see the chat is live, asking a question, which in our world is just submitting a support ticket, searching our help center, which is driving a level of self-service, and then accessing the getting started guide. Help center versus getting started guide, they're kind of the same thing. One I'll talk about later. One is a guided experience, do this, do that, do the other thing, and the other one is more of a search-based one. The second thing we did was we said, let's experiment with in-product messaging, which is what we did, which led to the positive unintended consequence was that it led to those three disparate efforts, support tickets, customer product experience, and then sales efforts became much more connected. The third thing we did is through all of this, we had an explosion of customer data, of usage data, of product signals and intent and support tickets and sales operations and all those wonderful things. We started to realize that we had to manage our data explosion. So this is a picture from a couple of years ago. Don't pay too much attention to the things in there because I probably shouldn't show you that. But we had, and by the way, it was not as clean as it looks in the diagram. But one thing we realized is that if we don't, as product people, we feel like we have the best data in the company, right? Salespeople, no offense, are, hey, I talked to Sally, and Sally's 30% likely to spend $50,000 at the end of the month. And we feel like what we see is Sally's company who are actively using chat as a support channel, or whose help center is getting tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of hits or something along those lines. So we feel like we have incredible data around customer intent, customer behavior, what they like, what they don't like, what they want, what their unmet needs are. And what we wanted to do was, number one, manage that data because it's typically unstructured and hard to manage. And number two is we wanted to share it out. So we sort of started to manage that data explosion. The second thing we did, and this is a really simple visualization, is we wanted to share it with as many people in the company as possible. So this is just a picture of our apps and how many of them are public versus marketing apps. But we created, from the data that we structured and organized in data warehouses, we created dashboards, and we gave broad access to the company internally to those dashboards. And guess who the number one best user of these dashboards were? CSMs, exactly. Somebody said it over there, which really pissed me off, by the way, because I wanted the product managers to be it. But if you've worked with product managers, you know that they're arrogant. And they're like, I don't need to look at the data. I already know the data. Okay, not true. This isn't being recorded, is it? But one thing we realized is when we started to show this usage data, the customer success team, which at the time was super nascent in Zendesk, were eating this data up like crazy. They really want to understand, I'm going to meet with this customer, I want to understand his usage, or these are the types of accounts that I want to go talk to that I haven't talked to yet. So they were really using that data, and it was a super effective thing that we did. The final thing that we did is we started looking at things as funnels, right? Now today everybody looks at everything like funnels, and in the early days we did that. But one thing we started to realize is a couple things. Number one, we bought a chat company named Zopum, which is now Zendesk Chat, which is a funnel, web try buy business. Our Zendesk.com is a funnel, and very understandable impressions, conversions, expansions, whatever you want to call it. And then we started thinking, well, maybe we don't just have 2 funnels in Zendesk. Maybe we have like 50. Maybe activating a help center, maybe turning on email as a support channel, maybe configuring your triggers. All these things are funnels. So what we started to do is we went a little funnel crazy, which was good, but we started to look at everything via funnels. We used the funnel visualization to do it. We also used the other visualization to do it. This is a product called Heap that we use sometimes as well. And we started to look at conversions of features. We started to think about feature funnels. And we had a whole lot of funnels and a lot of people looking at them. Some of these funnels are incredibly hard to move. So one of the challenges is, as a product person, it's great to instrument my product and see it as a funnel, but understanding the intent and how to move it is a whole lot more complicated. Which leads to sort of the conclusion after going through all of this, which is a really wonderful quote from Winston Churchill, which is that, what does success mean for me as a product person at Zendesk? To a certain extent, success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm, right? From a product perspective, this stuff is really hard. We don't have a simple shopping cart. We're not, Amazon or Zappos or something where all we're trying to do is, oversimplification, is move, lower shopping cart abandonment or get people to click on more things. It's super complicated. We're not Candy Crush, where we want people to play more time because the more time they play, the more money they spend. It's complicated. We live in a really complicated, signal-rich environment. It's very hard to identify what are the product things that we can do that will really drive the customer outcomes that we want. But the enthusiasm piece is why I love this quote, right? That we live in a world as product managers where we have access to data that we never had before. I'm older than I look, and I remember the old days of enterprise software of the only signals that you got were from your sales reps or from Gartner, right? Or from the customer in the executive briefing that you do once a year. And now we get all these signals, and that leads to that enthusiasm that we feel like we can solve those problems. The other thing we did is that in the meantime, this is a page from our tech specs on our website. We built a tremendous amount of features. It's still scrolling, that hasn't repeated yet. I think it'll repeat. It's repeating. So at the same time as we're going through this pure sort of environment, we created a really sophisticated and feature-rich and in a lot of times complicated set of products for customers to consume. So what does that mean? Where are we today? A couple things. First of all, what we want to do in a perfect world is this concept of personalization at scale. We have startup B2B software companies and really large consumer electronic dinosaurs and food delivery services and mobile games all trying Zendesk or in the Zendesk product experience at some point. What we want to be able to do is provide some level of personalization as we scale out. And there are different ways we can do that. I love this picture, by the way. I really want to be on that flight. No pandas were harmed in the taking of that photo. But that's what we want to do. There's a couple ways that we do that. First of all, as a basic experience, we had years of debate. Do we want to have the LinkedIn checklist where you're never more than 80% done with fixing your profile? Or I've been at 80% for 5 years, and I'm really pissed off about it because they keep getting me back to do more, and I'm not 100% yet. Or do we want to say, here's your list of things you can do with Zendesk, choose your own adventure. And one thing we've realized through lots of product work and lots of data is that there's really, at a minimum, 2 types of buyers. So how do we provide both of those experiences? How do we provide the super guided experience that says, do this, do that, do this, then you win? And how do we provide the customer who maybe knows what he or she is doing? So the first thing we did was we reinvented our primary trial user experience into something we call Discovery that allows people to explore the capabilities of our support product. For us, what was important, again, is when customers make the initial buying decision in Zendesk, and this differs company to company and product to product and segment to segment. In our world, we sell to small and medium-sized businesses who are buying customer support and other sort of customer engagement products. One thing that we learned was that when they make the buying decision, customers like to understand that they can grow with us. But very often they won't start, they'll adopt it a feature at a time. So it was important for us that customers saw that all the stuff that we were marketing and selling to them on our website and our webinars and through sales engagements actually existed in the product, and you can actually set it up. So the first thing we did was go from only a checklist kind of thing to product discovery. The second thing we did is we continue to do a good job of capturing information from customers. And marketing companies and customer success companies and CRM companies have talked about this forever. But how do you capture what we think about as like, what's the minimum amount of information that we want to capture from customers that will give a better guided experience? So as this example, we ask a simple question: what type of customers do you want to serve? Select all that apply: businesses, consumers, and internal. So those are the three primary use cases for Zendesk. And what we do is we're like, if they click on consumers, there's a really, really good chance that even though they're trialing our support product, they're going to want our live chat product as well, because live chat is, as you may have noticed, kind of popular. So again, nothing too complicated. The third thing we did is that we started to realize that we can market inside of our product. So we created this app tray, which looks like Google Apps or Microsoft Office 365, because what we found was that even with all of our best efforts, our customers and our trialers didn't know what products we actually had. So that's another thing we did. And the final thing we did is we started to look at not just the trial and initial customer journey, but the whole customer lifecycle. In a perfect world, you start on a version of our support product, you upgrade, you cross-sell over into our chat product, you upgrade again, and then you get to the top right where you have a whole variety of geometric figures that you've purchased from Zendesk. That's the perfect world. Obviously, it's not, no customer journey is perfect and has these really wonderful right angles. But we started to think about how do we drive awareness and cross-sell and expansion into the product experience itself. And then, I'm not going to read all these words, don't worry, I know it's early in the morning, but how do we turn product signals into marketing and sales and success campaigns? So to go from what's the trigger, what is the usage data, or what is the demographic signal that we're getting that can lead to a campaign, that can ask customers to take a particular action, that can lead to some level of conversion. And we started to really think about, again, being more sophisticated in product, about understanding that we have to work more closely with the business to do these things. And they can be just within one of our plans, like on the left, where there's a lot of feature conversion that we can do just to drive, hey, you haven't turned this feature on, you should turn this feature on. And then sometimes they can be jumping from one bucket to the other bucket. So the last thing I want to talk about is things I wish I knew in 2011 when I started this journey at Zendesk, as it regards what we're talking about. And I came up with really 5 things, which I think are relevant to the world of customer success. First of all, I think it's natural in many companies for it to be sales and success versus product. Zendesk is a pretty happy place. We used to have the fat Buddha as our mascot. We've never really been sort of fighting. I spent time on both sides of the business, but I think the thing that I wish I fully realized in the early days was that product complements sales and success. The human touch complements the product experience, and customers don't think about them as anything different. We think about them as different because of the way that we're organized internally, and I think that's the danger. Second is get great at what you're already good at. At Zendesk, what you may have noticed is we went through this journey and we got back to good customer experience, good product experience, think in terms of funnels, web try buy, drive engagement, and then the money will come. Well, I wish I had realized that we're really good at that stuff and we want to continue to get really good at that stuff and innovating, as opposed to maybe trying to do things that we weren't necessarily good at. The third thing is probably the downside of it is that every experiment you run becomes legacy if you're not careful. Every time you add a feature, every time you instrument a feature, or every time you add something, you add a sales channel, you add this, you add a product, you're creating instant legacy if you're not careful. So one thing that we do very often is I could spend another half an hour talking about our end of life program. Product manager has a little emoji of the Grim Reaper, but we actually retire our features and move customers in a very organized and structured way onto the new versions of those features because legacy is just super dangerous. And I think in all of us, as we're experimenting with putting this on the website and trying chat and driving this level of engagement and putting an overlay on this, all that can create legacy that becomes really hard to manage if you're not careful. The fourth thing is segments. God, I love segments, right? They're so interesting. Show me the list of active trialers who are between 100 and 999 employees and have been active in the trial experience for 10 days, right? And we have so many ways of pulling those segments, which is really exciting, and so many things we can do with them. I think the challenge with segments is that it's too easy to have too many of them, right? So finding the right balance of that, I think, is critical. We've in our company and in our product team, we've over-segmented at times. And what it comes down to is at the end of the day, there's 3 or 4 or 5 segments that matter that encompass the vast majority of customers that we interact with. So it's so easy to over-segment. It's so tempting. But I challenge you guys to try to keep it as simple as possible. And then the final thing is that as we've grown from 100 people when I started to, I think, 1,800 or something like that, one thing I've noticed is that everybody's job gets, except for our CEO, everybody's job has gotten smaller and more specific, right? So it's important that an individual person or individual team has a mission and understands what that mission is. So we have a trial growth team that works on the trial user experience. And their single mission for 2016 was to drive longer engagement in the first visit, right? And that was sort of the one metric that they looked at, and it was essentially the mission that they took on. As we scale out, and as I said, and we have all these people doing it, this idea of customer success, product experience is so heady and hard to understand that it's super important that people have an individual mission. And one thing that's been great for us is seeing how individual teams take these missions. So those are some of my thoughts on sort of a product person's viewpoint of the customer success world. And I thank you, Laz, for my time. Thanks.